Russia quietly puts up to 9 secret satellites into orbit. Russia launched a classified Soyuz 2-1B rocket from the Plesetsk military cosmodrome in the early hours of April 17, 2026, deploying what tracking data now suggests may be as many as 9 military spacecraft across 2 distinct orbital planes. The U.S. Space Force has since catalogued a total of 10 objects associated with the mission, offering a rare window into the scale and complexity of a launch Moscow has said almost nothing about. The rocket lifted off at approximately 2:17 Moscow time, 23:18 UTC, on April 16, carrying multiple spacecraft for the Russian Ministry of Defense. Multiple sightings of what appeared to be a rocket ascent were reported from Finland shortly after 2:30 Moscow time. The Ministry of Defense confirmed the launch around 3 o'clock Moscow time and declared full success roughly 6 hours later, stating that the spacecraft had been successfully delivered to their intended orbits. No further details were provided. What the Russians did not announce, however, was nearly as informative as what they did. Published imagery of the launch showed a payload fairing configuration typically associated with the Volga upper stage, a rare, restartable space tug capable of precise orbital maneuvering. Critically, no maritime hazard warnings were issued for any ocean areas that would normally be designated for the deorbiting of such a stage after use. Space analyst Anatoly Zak noted the secretive launch likely involved the Volga, which would mark only its second mission paired with a Soyuz 2 series rocket and its 10th flight overall when counting the Soyuz 2-1V variant. The U.S. Space Force initially tracked a single object in a 457 by 547 kilometer orbit, inclined at 98.33 degrees to the equator. Within hours, that count had grown to 3 objects, and by the afternoon of April 17 it had risen to 5, with 2 NORAD ID numbers skipped, a gap that astrophysicist and satellite tracker Jonathan McDowell noted likely indicated additional objects had been detected but not yet formally listed. By April 18, the total had reached 10 catalogued objects. Analysts piecing together the orbital data have sketched a likely sequence of events. Object C, tracked in a highly elliptical orbit with a very low perigee of around 146 to 153 kilometers, is believed to represent the spent third stage of the Soyuz 2 rocket, which was left in a decaying trajectory following separation. Object D, assessed as the Volga upper stage itself, then conducted what appeared to be a circularization burn followed by a notable orbital plane change, shifting its inclination from approximately 98.26 degrees to 96.95 degrees. That maneuver released a first batch of payloads, objects E, A, and B, into one orbital cluster. The plane change maneuver was significant enough to raise questions about the Volga's remaining propellant budget. In all but one of its previous missions, the Volga stage completed a deorbit burn after releasing its payloads. On this mission, however, tracking data as of April 18 showed Object D maneuvering into a lower 463 by 481 kilometer orbit, interpreted as an orbit-lowering burn intended to hasten atmospheric re-entry of the spent stage rather than a controlled deorbit. The inclination change maneuver, analysts noted, may have consumed enough fuel to preclude a proper deorbit. A second, larger group of payloads, objects F, G, H, J, and K, were tracked in a near-circular orbit at roughly 550 kilometers and 96.95 degrees inclination, consistent with being released from the Volga after it completed its plane change. That places the bulk of the deployed spacecraft in a different orbital shell from the first group, a configuration that can extend coverage, improve revisit rates, or distribute capability across redundant platforms. The mission, designated 2026-083 by international catalogers, is part of Russia's sustained effort to expand and refresh its military space architecture. Moscow has consistently accelerated its Cosmos series satellite launches in recent years, covering reconnaissance, signals intelligence, communications, and, increasingly, on-orbit inspection and proximity operations. The use of the Volga upper stage to inject payloads into 2 separate inclinations in a single mission underscores the growing sophistication of Russian launch operations, even as Western sanctions have complicated access to foreign components. The true nature of the payloads remains unknown. Russia has not publicly identified any of the spacecraft beyond their generic Cosmos designation, a classification that spans a wide range of military satellite types.